Hey guys, today we'll be recapping a manhwa called The Devil's Impression of a Princess. Trust me, it's more fun than it sounds. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe. Thanks. The scene unfolded as some demons were killed in a war. Their king was injured and he was tired. The demon queen raised him, holding him from his shirt, and said, "So much for all that talk about stealing the demon throne from me. Is this all you've got?" The king smirks and said, "What can I say? I wasn't expecting to lose every single battle. But there is one thing I've realized." He said, "I'll never be able to defeat you at this rate. Because I am in love." She strikes at his face, interrupting him. She said, "Come better prepared next time." She shouts, "Do you think fighting the demon queen is some sort of joke? You need at least another century of training. Little did I know that no one would come to visit me in the demon castle for the next 100 years. After some years, the demon queen was reading some books and Stolas comes and shouts, "You kidnapped a princess?" She replied, "Yes, isn't that perfectly within my rights as the demon queen?" He said, "Be that as it may." He asked, "Haven't you heard the rumors circulating of late about that monster? They call him Mordred the Warrior. It's said he slaughters any and all demons that cross his path." She closed her book saying, "That's exactly why I kidnapped the princess." Hearing this, Stolas gets shocked and asked, "Pardon?" She said, "If he's as great as they say, I'd like to meet him myself. But it's not like he's going to mosey on in here on his own." Stolas sees the books named A Knight's Tale, A Hero Never Abandons a Princess, and The Wild Princess and the Prince Who Tamed Her. He shouts, "These books! This is why you kidnapped her, isn't it? Did I not advise you to refrain from reading such nonsense?" He said, "The heroes in fairy tales are so very different from the ones in real life." She shouts, "Which is precisely why I wish to see him for myself." She said, "Unlike the dolts here who betray me day in and day out. The men in these stories swear to be faithful to the ones they love and would willingly give up their lives for them. If knights are really like that, then." Meanwhile, Stolas was walking through the hall and the princess kidnapped by Demon Queen peeks behind wall asking, "Excuse me. How long do you plan on kidnapping me for?" She saw Stolas and he saw her. They both fell in love at first sight. The Demon Queen comes and seeing them staring each other asked, "What are you two doing?" She gets shocked and said, "Hello? Guys?" After some time she asked them both, "So what do you want me to do?" They both glance at each other and Queen shouts, "Come on. Out with it." Stolas said, "Never in my life have I been overcome with such intense emotion. I wish to marry this woman who seems like an angel, but who thankfully isn't one, and spend the rest of my days with her." She shouts, "That's not what I'm asking about. The human king is currently at his wit's end. He's offering his daughter's hand in marriage to whoever can bring her back. It's only a matter of time before the warrior comes to her rescue, which means her future husband has effectively been decided." Princess gets shocked hearing this and shouts, "That isn't what I want at all." She starts blushing and said, I wish to marry Stolas here." Stolas said, "Princess Freya?" The Demon Queen asked, "Just what would you like me to do, then? Kill a knight?" Stolas said, "That is inadvisable. Doing so could lead to a major war between the demons and humans." The princess said, "If we could just find someone to act as my stand-in like usual." Queen asked her, "What are you talking about?" Princess said, "Father was extremely protective of me growing up. He always had someone else pretend to be me whenever he went out." She said, "So no one actually knows what I look like." Hearing this, Demon Queen gets happy and said, "That's it. That's exactly what we need." Stolas asked her, "Do you intend to look for someone who can act as her double?" She asked him, "Are you a complete fool?" She said, "I'll be her stand-in." Stolas shouts, "What? Your Majesty! You intend to disguise yourself as the princess?" The queen, holding Princess's shoulders, said, "You heard what she said. This warrior guy doesn't know what she looks like." She said, "Anyone could pretend to be her. Plus, I've always wanted to know what it's like to be the princess in a fairy tale." Meanwhile she thinks, and see what it's like to have a steamy romance with a handsome knight. Stolas gets shocked and asks, then who will look after the demon realm and manage the castle while you're gone? Queen said, not a soul's come looking for me in 100 years. Who'd come now? The princess said, I think it's a wonderful plan. She said, if it means I can be with Stolas. Stolas said, oh, Freya. The queen thinks, the road leading to the demon castle is replete with dangers. It'll take a knight at least a few more days to get here, so I'll come up with a plan A and a plan B to fool him. Meanwhile, suddenly the floor starts shaking and Princess asked, why is the floor shaking? The queen thinks, that's the sound of the castle gates opening. Has he already arrived? She clenched her hand and shouts, in that case, I'll go with plan F. Hearing this, Stolas thinks, plan F? How many plans did you come up with? The knight comes, he was, Mordred the warrior, undefeated in battle. He is widely reputed to be a most noble and virtuous knight. However, he thinks, I've felled countless adversaries to get here. A fire-breathing dragon, a swamp bubbling with poison, and even a man-eating plant. He clenched his hand thinking, now, if I can just defeat the demon lord. He starts blushing while thinking, the greatest riches in the world will be all mine. Meanwhile, the truth is, he's just as materialistic as the next person. He opens the gate and enters the palace. Seeing his surroundings, he thinks, why is it so quiet in here? Suddenly something hits the chandelier. Chandelier fell down, and he managed to dodge it somehow. He gets shocked and thinks, is this a trap? Stolas comes and said, so you really are as skilled as they say. Seeing him, Mordred said, you. Stolas said, your reputation precedes you, Mordred the warrior. Meanwhile it was plan F. Stolas thinks, how did I get myself into this mess? Mordred asked him, where is the princess? Stolas said, that question is of irrelevance. Stolas said, you shall meet certain death here at the hands of the demon lord, that is to say, me. Mordred pulls his sword and places it on Stolas's neck, saying, tell me where she is, or I shall make you regret it. While attacking, he shouts, the princess. He attacks, saying, is my most precious treasure. Stolas dogged it. Stolas asked, your treasure? What exactly is your relationship with the princess? Mordred smirks while saying, of course, you wouldn't know, living in the lap of luxury on your throne. He said, I, on the other hand, grew up risking my life for mere morsels of bread. Stolas thinks, what's with this sudden flashback? Mordred said, after leading a life of great hardship, there is something that I've learned. He said, which is that? Money is the only thing that matters. Hearing this, Stolas gets shocked and confused and thinks, wow, that's exactly what a knight should never say. Stolas said, so when you said the princess was your treasure, you meant? Mordred interrupts him, saying, that's right. Once I marry her, I'll never have to worry about money again. Hearing this, Stolas thinks, I'll never allow the likes of him to marry my Freya. As for Her Majesty, well, I'm sure she won't care. Stolas attacks while shouting, enough of this foolish talk. Mordred dogged him and also hit back, making a minor injury on Stolas' face. Stolas gets shocked and thinks, I missed. Stolas pretended to loss and fell down. He said, oh, however can this be? What truly extraordinary powers you have. I have been defeated. Those arrows should lead you to the princess. Stolas said, so this is how it ends for me, the great demon lord. Oh, woe is me. Seeing him, Mordred gets shocked and thinks, how is it that he's such a weakling? Mordred said, well, I might as well get going. Onwards, to the princess. He went to the room following the arrows where Demon Queen was pretending as princess. Seeing her, Mordred said, this must be her, King Otis's one and only daughter, Princess Freya. Meanwhile, S voice comes saying, kiss the princess to wake her. Hearing this, Mordred blushed and gets shocked. He shouts nervously, kiss? How could I commit such a depraved act? He thinks, I've never even held hands with a woman, let alone kissed one. He gets close to he thinking, as still, if touching lips is the only way, Suddenly he gets back. He sighs and thinks, but is this really okay? I haven't even gotten her consent. What if she gets upset? Meanwhile, Demon Queen said, just get on with it already. And grabs Mordred. She kissed him forcefully while he said, huh? How? Freya, I mean Demon Queen said, hey there, knight. Mordred gets nervous and starts blushing. Mordred gets back saying, my apologies. He said, how thoughtless of me. You could have used some support getting up. Meanwhile, Freya. Who is Demon Queen, you guys? Now that's so I will just use to say her. Freya. She thinks, this Mordred fellow. She thinks, he's the spitting image of the knight in my books. She holds her hand saying, thank you for saving me, Sir Knight. She hugs him saying, you have no idea how terrified I've been while in the clutches of the strongest, most awe-inspiring demon lord in the world. Mordred asked, is that so? She asked him, does this mean we can return to the royal palace now? Mordred nods his head and Freya said, what a relief! How will we get back? Will we go on horseback? I just can't wait to ride your horse. She said while pushing Mordred, who was the toughest opponent you had to face on your way here? She said, the Demon King told me the most challenging part was supposed to be that. Saying this, they left the room. Meanwhile, the real Freya and Stolas was hiding under the bed and they comes out and Freya asked, are they gone? Stolas said, yes, it seems so. Mordred and Freya comes to the palace, and the crowd standing there waiting for them starts cheering. They shouts, the knight has returned with the princess. Long live Sir Mordred. Freya peeks and seeing the crowd thinks, this is some crowd. They're going to make my ears bleed with all that cheering. She hugged Mordred while sitting behind him on the horse thinking, I'm so glad I agreed to do this. There's nothing like a knight. They went in front of the king and he said, Sir Mordred, you defeated the notorious Demon King. And rescued the princess. As such. He starts crying while saying, I hereby grant you your promised reward, the princess's hand in marriage. And an estate of your very own. The kingdom shall also display a statue of you vanquishing the Demon King in the public square. Seeing this thought, Freya gets shocked and thinks, what the heck is that hideous thing? Is that supposed to be me? She uncovers her face and shouts, excuse me. She said the Demon King looked nothing like that. Seeing her, everyone gets shocked. They all get silent for a moment. The king shouts, that's not the princess. Hearing this, Mordred thinks, she's not the princess? Then who did I rescue? Freya said, I am the princess. The king in anger said, how dare you lie to me? My daughter is as fair as a lily. Your jack-o'-lantern face could never come close to her beauty. Freya clenched her hand with a fake smile on her face. She thinks, oh, how I'd like to rip this old geezer's tongue out. She said, Father, you are too cruel. How could you not recognize your own daughter? The king said, you do not resemble her in the slightest. How am I to believe you? King's brother said, if what you say is true, prove it. She said, are you sure that is what you want? You're going to regret it. She said, Father, I know what you did last summer. Hearing this, the king gets shocked and said, last summer? That can only mean. She said, I had told you I wanted to see a real-life elephant, so you put on a mask and crawled on all fours around the palace. Everyone gets shocked and King said, Gah! How embarrassing! He said, only Freya and I know about that. How? Tears fell from her eyes as she said, do you still not believe me? I may have been cursed by the wicked Demon King, but I am still your loving daughter. Hearing this, Mordred thinks, something strange. If the Demon King is dead, shouldn't the curse have been lifted by now? The king said, I am sorry, my child. I should never have doubted you. Hearing this, she gets happy and thinks, yes. Thanks, Freya. The king said, then, it is time to fulfill my promise to the knight. What do you say? Do you wish to marry my daughter? Hearing this, Mordred thinks, this is what I've fought for, so why do I have this ominous feeling? It's as if all my ancestors have banded together, and are screaming at me not to do it. He clenched his hand thinking, but I can't back out now. He thinks, I have something I must protect. He said, I wish to. Meanwhile, Freya interrupts him saying, wait. Mordred gets shocked and thinks, why, Your Highness? The king asked, is there a problem, princess? She thinks, a problem? There's a whole lot of problems. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to live the life of a princess. She glanced at Mordred thinking, not to mention. He's exactly how I imagined. It would be such a shame to skip over the courtship stage and jump straight into marriage. I want to go on dates, hear him declare his love for me, and overcome obstacles together, just like in the books. Then we can get married. Meanwhile, Mordred thinks, does she think I'm not good enough? But she seemed quite taken with me back at the demon castle. King's brother claps while saying, now. He said, Her Highness should have some say in the selection of her husband. He asked, isn't that right, Sir Mordred? Mordred said, yes, of course. King's brother said, then I am afraid the man best suited to be Her Highness's groom is our neighboring countries. She interrupts him shouting, hold on. I never said I wouldn't marry him. She said, what I meant was, I just need a little time to prepare myself, that's all. King said, then how about this, princess? The festival of the Earth Goddess is coming up. Make up your mind before then and let me know. If we hold the wedding on that day, you will not only receive the people's blessing, but that of the goddess herself. She said, what an excellent idea, father. She asked Mordred, right, Mordred? Meanwhile she whispers, when exactly is this festival? Mordred whispers, unless something has changed, 3 months from now, just as in previous years. She thinks 3 months? That should be plenty of time. She said, wonderful. You shall have my answer in exactly 3 months from now. The king chuckled while saying, yes, my dear. Meanwhile, Mordred gets confused and thinks, that's strange. He thinks, shouldn't she know when it is? After some time, Mordred went to a church. A priest named Clarent comes and holding his shoulder said, that's quite a serious look on your face. You must have many things you wish to ask of the goddess. Seeing him, Mordred shouts, Clarent. Clarent said, I'm relieved you've managed to return unscathed, but why do you look so pale? He said, you have defeated the demon lord. Are you not pleased? Upset Mordred said, I have no reason to be happy. He explains the whole story and Clarent said, so you saved the princess. But she wishes to postpone marriage. And you have no idea what her reasons are? Mordred nods with tears in his eyes. Clarent said, is this really something to be so concerned about? You did say she didn't reject you. Mordred said, that's not all. Clarent asked then. Mordred sighed and thinks, how do I tell him that there's something off about this princess I've saved? All it took was a graze from the tip of my sword to take out the demon lord. And the princess doesn't even know when one of the kingdom's biggest festivals is being held. He said, what I am about to tell you is strictly hypothetical, just a what-if type of scenario. Say the person I've saved turns out to be an impostor disguised as the princess, what would become of me? Clarent starts laughing and said, haha. What kind of question is that? It'll be off with your head, of course. Mordred thinks, oh, off with my head? Clarent asked, was it the shock of her refusal that put such an absurd thought into your head? He said, I've told you this many times, Mordred, but there's no need to worry yourself so. Don't think about problems that have yet to arise. Mordred said, Clarent. Meanwhile he thinks, he's right. This isn't the time to be letting my imagination run wild. If I want to protect this temple, I have to marry the princess, no matter what. He stands while saying, I'm not the person you should be worrying about right now. He gets happy and said, don't worry. I'll capture the princess's heart before the 3 months are up. Meanwhile, King's brother in his workplace reading some papers called his daughter. He said, Charlotte? Her daughter replied, yes, father. He said, the marriage between Mordred and the princess has been delayed 3 months. Which means, you have that much time to charm the knight. Charlotte said, Yes, father. She said, I'll make sure he falls in love with me well before then. Next day a doctor comes to examine Freya and he asked her, Your Highness, are you absolutely sure you do not feel pain or discomfort anywhere? She said, I'm telling you, I'm fine. The servants said to doctor, Please examine her thoroughly. Sir, she is entirely different from her usual self. They said. As soon as she entered the room, she began fishing around in all the drawers while humming some strange song, like a thief gleefully ransacking someone else's room. She thinks, I was just so amazed by how this place is exactly what I imagined a princess's room to be like. The doctor said she is in perfect physical condition, but I shall perform one more test just in case. He asked her, Here's a question anyone in the kingdom should be able to answer. Name 5 heroes who brought glory to the kingdom. He said, Tell us the names of the 5 heroes. In order, please. Hearing this, she gets shocked and thinks, How am I supposed to know that? She thinks, All I know is that I, Lilith, brought glory to the demon castle. But I have to say something. She hesitantly said, Mordred. The servants hearing this starts blushing, saying, Oh my heavens! She named Sir Mordred instead of the 5 great knights from the early days of the kingdom's founding. She must be thinking about him non-stop. The doctor said, It seems there is a slight issue with Her Highness's memory. He said, Her inability to recall events of the past, and the changes in her behavior and manner of speech, can be attributed to the shock of being kidnapped by demons. I recommend that she get plenty of rest. They leave and Freya flop on the bed saying, Pretending to be a princess is so much harder than I expected. She thinks, if they find out who I really am. Down with the fake princess. Don't you dare set foot in the royal palace. And stay away from the warrior. Suddenly she raised, saying, I can't let that happen. She clenched her hands, saying, I have to be careful not to get caught, but at the same time, I'm going to do all the things I want to do before leaving this place. She starts reading her diary and said, These are some of the things I absolutely must do. She writes some points on the diary, send out invitations for a tea party, dress up in the most fashionable clothes in the kingdom, get into a catty quarrel at said tea party, she said, not to mention this, and this. She said, but at the top of my list is, of course. She starts blushing while thinking, dancing with a knight. She closed the diary and said, I also want him to protect me. And then when he is injured in battle and breathing heavily, I'll have him lay on my lap. I'll somehow figure out a way to make it all happen within the next 3 months. This'll be my princess bucket list. She went to the temple and thinks, I never thought I'd step foot into a temple of my own free will. Still, I need to find out as much as I can about life here in the kingdom so people won't be suspicious of me like they were this morning. Are you really the princess? If Mordred begins to suspect me, I'm doomed. Meanwhile Clarent comes and asked, Your Highness? He said, It is an honor to finally meet you. I am Clarent, the High Priest. Seeing him she thinks, What kind of High Priest is this good-looking? She thinks, Get your act together, Lilith. You're here to find out what that festival is all about. Clarent asked, His Majesty the King is quite worried. Are you feeling all right? She said, Oh, of course. Father doth worry too much. She thinks, I had to convince him that I needed freedom to roam in order to recover my memories. Clarent said, You said you wished to know more about the festival of the Earth Goddess. Do you see that statue up there? It was she who first breathed life into this land. The event is a celebration of her birth. It lasts 10 days, during which there is much merrymaking. It is said that those who are wedded on the final day of the festival will be blessed with great fortune. Hearing this she gets stunned and said, Wedded? Clarent said, I heard you postponed your engagement to Mordred. He asked her, Does your Highness not find him satisfactory? She replied, Well, it's not exactly that I don't like him. He said, I'm not just saying this because he is my friend, but he has always been rather popular with the ladies. There is even one woman who has proposed to him 100 times. I am really quite curious as to why you turned him down. Hearing this, she gets shocked and thinks, what? He's that popular? Hold on, how am I supposed to answer him? She said, that is precisely the reason why I cannot work up the courage to approach him. Clarence said, ha ha ha, that is understandable. Meanwhile he thinks, I was trying to find out what she really thinks, but she isn't opening up. He thinks, will you be all right, Mordred? Freya said, then I shall be going. Clarence said, yes, your highness. She leaves and a girl comes to Clarence asking, was that Princess Freya? He replied, indeed. Mordred saved her from the clutches of the demon lord after a fierce battle. She asked him, did you hear what happened the day she returned? Clarence said, Mordred told me everything. Why, is there a problem? He said, if it's about the wedding being postponed. She said, no, it's nothing. Wearing her hat, she thinks, there's word the king said the person Mordred saved wasn't his daughter. It looks like Clarence hasn't heard about that yet. She says she lost her memories, but she somehow remembers she's a princess. How? As someone who knows all the rumors in the palace, my intuition tells me that there's something suspicious about that woman. In the next scene, Mordred was training while he thinks, I have to face reality. I have only 3 months to capture the princess's heart. He thinks, but how? He sits down and sighed. Meanwhile, Charlotte comes and offers him a handkerchief. He said, oh, thank you. Meanwhile, he turns and seeing Charlotte gets shocked. He asked, Lady Charlotte? She said, it has been so long, Mordred. They went inside and Mordred asked her to leave his way, please step aside. She shouts, no. She asked him, why must you refuse to listen to what I have to say? He turns back saying, I do not wish to create any misunderstandings. She clenched her hand asking, what in the world are you talking about? Tears comes from her eyes as she said, do not tell me you are calling my feelings for you a misunderstanding. Seeing her, he sighed and offered her handkerchief. He said, has Duke Magnus not told you that I am to marry the princess, and I will soon be? She snatched it from him and said, interrupting him, whatever are you talking about? Oh, you don't mean that nonsense, do you? He did mention something about the princess asking for your marriage to be postponed. She said, according to His Majesty, the princess has never expressed a particular preference for who she weds, but she was vehemently opposed to marrying you straight away. She said, if the princess, who said she'd be happy with any suitor, does not wish to be with you. Her words stabbed his heart as she said, could it be because she is not even the least bit attracted to you? He gets upset and asked, are you saying I have absolutely no appeal as a potential groom? She said, and no, that is not what I meant. But if the princess announced her wish to postpone the marriage in front of everyone, is that not a roundabout way of rejecting you? Hearing this, he gets shocked. She said, which means there is nobody who wants this marriage to happen. She said, it is not too late, Mordred. You can still reconsider my father's suggestion. Holding his hand, she said, of marrying me? Hearing this, Mordred gets angry and asked her in serious tone, would you call what Lord Magnus said a mere suggestion? He told me that if I didn't betray His Majesty and take his side, he would destroy the temple, the last refuge for children who have lost their parents and homes. Does that sound like a suggestion to you? He said, whatever it is, I have no intention of accepting it. He turns saying, take care, Lady Charlotte. She shouts, and Mordred. He leaves and she shouts to stop him, but he leaves. After some time he thinks, could what she said be true? That nobody wants this marriage to happen? While walking, a servant bumped into him. He said, I'm sorry, are you all right? The servant holding flowers bowed and said, and my apologies. Mustn't let these flowers get damaged. They are for Her Highness. He said, oh, I see. She runs upstairs saying, then I shall take my leave. Meanwhile he thinks, who could have gifted the princess a bouquet? The audacity of sending her flowers when I'm right here. Does the whole palace know that Her Highness doesn't want to be with me? I wonder what her reasons are. I've never had to approach a woman before. They always come to me first, so I can't for the life of me figure out. Suddenly he gets shocked thinking, wait, could that be why? Because I haven't been assertive enough? She kissed me first that day. I've just been following along. He clenched his hand thinking, maybe that's it. That means it's my turn to make a move. According to the manual on courtship, one of the most obvious but effective ways to win someone's heart is, he shouts, writing them a love letter. Meanwhile, the servant was Isla, the girl who has suspected Lilith. She went to her room and opens the door with a tool. She enters inside, dropping the flowers there and asking herself, that was close. What's Mordred doing in the palace at this time of day? She said, good thing I didn't get caught. She stretched her body and said, now. Seeing Lilith's dairy, she said, it's time to find out if the princess really is who she claims to be. She picks the dairy and starts reading while saying, it's time to find out if the princess really is who she claims to be. Reading it, she gets shocked and said, this has to be some sort of prank. What on earth? Meanwhile, Lilith comes back thinking, I spent far too long in that temple trying to learn things that'll make life in the palace easier. How I miss the murky air of the demon world, so thick with hatred. I suppose it's my fault. Really, for taking it upon myself to visit the temple. If only I had a minion like Stola's here. Meanwhile, she noticed her room's door opened. Seeing it, she thinks, why is the door to my room ajar? She saw Isla inside and thinks, who is that? Isla, reading the dairy, gets confused and thinks, what on earth is all this? Lilith comes and holds her shoulder asking, what are you doing here? She gets shocked and moves aside asking, who the hell are you? Lilith said, that's no way to speak to a princess. She shows her diary to her, which says rules to follow while pretending to be Princess Freya. 1. Don't swear. 2. Don't laugh with my legs spread wide open. Isla asked her, Princess? Yeah, right. I already saw what you wrote. Lilith said, how dare you barge into my room and rifle through my belongings? Give that back. Isla said, I'll use this as evidence. She points her finger towards Lilith saying, you must be one of Duke Magnus' henchmen. Hearing this, Lilith thinks, who the heck is Magnus? And did he just call me a henchman? How dare he? She gets angry and said, foolish human. She said, I am Lilith the Demon Queen, overlord of the demon realm and master of all that is evil. Isla said, you expect me to believe that? What demon queen would be stupid enough to pose as a princess? Lilith thinks, this one right here. Lilith used her magic saying, seeing as how you refuse to believe me, I shall prove it to you using my powers. She thinks, I made that book weigh as much as a horse-drawn carriage. She'll have no choice but to drop it, and meanwhile Isla still holds the dairy saying, I could lift this with one finger if I wanted to. Seeing her, Lilith thinks, huh? She's quite strong for a human. Isla said, if you really are the Demon Queen. Why did you trick Mordred into bringing you to the human realm? Lilith asked, shouldn't you have figured that out by now from my notes? It's always been a dream of mine to experience life as a human princess. Isla asked, then, what's all that stuff you wrote about Mordred? She said, I'm talking about all those obscene lines. Just what do you intend on doing to him? Lilith laughed and said, how should I put it? This is like a buy one, get one type of deal. She said, except what you really want is the bonus item. You know, like when you order a kid's meal at McDonald's for the toy. Isla said, I have no idea what McDonald's is, but what kind of adult would want to do that with a toy? Lilith thinks while staring Isla, how adorable. Now that I'm getting a closer look at this girl. Those eyes brimming with vigor, that upright posture and attitude, she reminds me of the knight. Is that what Mordred looked like as a child? Imagining that makes me want to keep her for myself. She thinks, how convenient. I was just thinking I needed a substitute for Stola's. Isla gets annoyed by Lilith's countenance staring at her, and she asked, Why are you cackling like that? Lilith said, It's decided. From this moment on, you are to be my human subordinate. Isla shouts, I never agreed to this. Lilith said, Come on, think about it. Being the Demon Queen's helper is a much greater job than you think. She said, If you sign a pact with me, you can start wars, acquire untold treasures, and even get people to worship you. She asked her, What do you think, little warrior? Isla shouts, I don't need any of that. She said, The people who helped me when I needed it the most weren't demons like you, but Mordred and Clarence from the temple. I would never betray them. She said, Above all, I would never do anything to make Clarence sad. She said, Never? Hearing this, Lilith smirks. Lilith asked her, By Clarence, do you mean that handsome high priest? So virtuous, noble, and devout. She said, I take great pleasure in corrupting such men. Isla drops the dairy, shouting, No! She asked her, What are you planning to do to him? Lilith thinks she looks far more distressed than when we were talking about the night. She whispers, Something very, very bad. She asked her, So, are you going to help me? Or shall I capture Clarence and make him serve me instead? Isla said, Those are both terrible options. She lifts a table, shouting, I'll just do away with you right here and now. The scene changed and we saw King's brother and Charlotte. Her father said, Charlotte, what of your conversation with Mordred? She thinks, I wasn't able to get the answer I wanted, but if we can use Princess Freya to our advantage, I am certain I will be able to change his mind. She raised her hand, thinking, if Freya turns him down, he will have to look for an alternative solution. She stabbed the knife in the steak, saying, I will make him realize that I am the only one who can solve his dilemma. Her father laughed and said, Ha ha ha, yes. That's my girl. Whipping his face, he said, Make sure to keep a watchful eye on the princess as well. She said, Do not worry, father. Everything has already been prepared. Meanwhile, Lilith got lots of letters and she said, Wow, look at all these. I should have known the humans would find me just as charming as the demons did. She thinks, excellent. Achieving the goals on my princess bucket list should be a breeze. Isla comes and said, Sorry to burst your bubble, but that's not why they invited you. The real princess never attended a single social event. She said, So there are many people who want to meet her. Lilith keeps staring her. Isla asked, Why do you keep looking at me like that? Lilith said, Because you're adorable, Isla. She said, When I asked you to tell everyone you're my personal attendant, you refused and only took the keys to the palace. But look at you still doing everything you're told to do. Isla clenched her hand, thinking, I'd like to punch her right in the face. But after what happened that day, she recalls the moment when Isla lifts the table to attack on Lilith. She shouts, I'll just do away with you right here and now. Lilith, seeing her strength, said, Oh ho. She grabs the table with just one hand without any hesitation. Seeing this, Isla gets shocked. Lilith said, Not bad for a human. How about another go? Isla thinks, It's infuriating, but I won't be able to defeat this monster using force. I'll have to play along until I can find another solution. Coming back to present, Isla said, Whatever? Just open up the invitations, fake princess. Lilith said, Alrighty then. She starts reading invitations, saying, Nope, nope, not this one either. Isla shouts, Stop throwing those on the floor. I'm the one who's gonna have to pick them up. Lilith said, Why are these so dull? She said, They're not at all like what I was imagining. I mean, tea parties are for young noblewomen to get together, laugh, and drink tea. Before they start making vicious remarks about each other and poisoning the other ladies' drinks. Hearing this, Isla asked her, Are you out of your mind? Lilith asked, What? That's what happens in all the stories you humans write. Isla said, What on earth kind of books have you been reading? Seeing an invitation, she said, Oh? This invitation looks different from all the rest. Isla said, Let me see. Lilith gives her the invitation. Isla, seeing the invitation, said they embellished it with a real gemstone. These noblewomen have way too much money on their hands. Noticing the letter, Isla gets shocked and said, "Hold on, this is from..." Meanwhile, Lilith interrupts her, saying, "Perfect." She said, "I'll be attending this one." Isla asked, "Do you even know who the host is?" Hearing this, Lilith thinks, "How curious. This letter carries the familiar scent of my homeland, with its potent smell of chaos and hatred." She starts sniffing the invitation, and Isla gets confused and asked her, "What do you think you're doing?" Isla, giving the letter to Lilith, said, "Already had a bad feeling about this invite, and you just made it worse." She asked, "Why?" Isla said, "Do you see the signature on the back? It says, Charlotte." She said, "You know His Majesty King Otis, don't you? Well, Duke Magnus is his younger brother. They might have completely different personalities, but they're descendants of the same bloodline." Meaning the Duke was also in line to inherit the throne. Charlotte is his only daughter. She has a lot of power and is known for her extravagant lifestyle, not to mention her extreme arrogance. Lilith asked Isla, "What's not to like about a noblewoman from a rich family? I should befriend her." Isla shouts, "That's not all." Isla turns her face, saying, "She's always stalking Mordred." Hearing this, Lilith asked, "She's the warrior's stalker?" Isla replied, "Yes. She's absolutely obsessed." She said, "He must have rejected her almost 100 times by now, but she still hasn't given up." She asked, "Why do you think someone like that would invite you, Mordred's potential bride, to her castle?" Lilith said, "Then that means she sent this invitation." She gets happy while saying, "As a challenge against her romantic rival." She thinks, "This is exactly the kind of thing I was hoping for." She said, "I must attend this party hosted by Shelley or whatever her name is. All the rest of these can get thrown out." Meanwhile, she noticed one invitation and thinks, "So? That one over there." While picking it, she thinks, "After reading thousands of human stories, I have a pretty good idea of what this contains." She picks it and kissed it. She said, "I nearly threw away a precious treasure." Meanwhile, Mordred staying up all night composing love letters seems unbecoming of a knight. He thinks, "I finally managed to send one off to the royal palace this morning. The 41st attempt was a failure too." He gets upset and thinks, "This isn't working." He thinks, "I ended up copying lines from a famous poem as none of my drafts seemed adequate." Holding a letter, he said, "Like this letter right here, for example." Meanwhile, he gets shocked noticing the letter. He thinks, "Wait, this is the poem I copied. Why is this still here? Didn't I send it off this morning? Surely I didn't get them mixed up. Otherwise, that would mean one of the letters I wrote myself is currently in the princess's hands." Mordred went to Clarent, and after telling him what happened, he asked, "What am I to do, Clarent?" Clarent said, "You mean to say you wrote a love letter whose contents you are much too embarrassed to reveal and sent it off to the princess?" Mordred sighed and said, "I'm doomed. What if she despises me for it?" Clarent said, "I can no longer tell if I'm listening to a confession or providing counsel on courtship." He said, "You never know. Her Highness might actually appreciate it." Hearing this, Mordred asked him, "You think so?" Clarent asked him, "Just what on earth did you write, Mordred?" He replied, "You have to promise not to laugh." Clarent said, "All right, I promise." He tells, "Oh, fairest princess, whenever I lay my eyes on you, I feel waves sweeping through my heart. Splash, splash. I can almost hear them crashing against the rocks. Splash, splash. I can also hear the seagulls in the distance. Caw, caw." Clarent said, "On second thought, perhaps this is a confession to God after all." He said, "Mordred, I must ask, this is not a joke, right?" Hearing this, Mordred gets shocked. He shouts, "It would have hurt less if you'd outright mocked me instead of asking me such a thing." While leaving, he said, "Forget it. I'm going to get that letter back before she reads it." Meanwhile, Charlotte and some other ladies were waiting for Freya in tea party. A lady said, "What an honor it is to attend Princess Freya's very first tea party. What sort of person do you suppose Her Highness is? Might she look like a slender canary, as the rumors say? A lady said this gathering was only possible because Her Highness is Lady Charlotte's cousin. The other ladies said, indeed, indeed. Charlotte picks the cup of tea. She smiled and said, I am just as excited as all of you. Meanwhile she thinks, you have no idea how hard I worked to prepare for this day. I spent 3 days and nights brewing this truth serum that makes the consumer divulge their deepest, darkest thoughts. Just 1 drop of this in the princess's teacup and I will know exactly how she feels about Mordred. Meanwhile the sound of door opening hits her ears. Lilith and Isla comes in and everyone was stunned seeing Lilith in a red dress. Charlotte slams her hand on table thinking, what the? She gets shocked seeing her and thinks, nobody told me she was so stunning. Lilith comes close to Charlotte and said to her, thank you for the invitation, Charlotte. Meanwhile she thinks, she's giving off that same scent of my homeland that I detected on the invitation card. Seeing them like this, Isla thinks, what the heck is she doing? A lady in blue dress said, Lady Charlotte, please allow us an opportunity to greet Her Highness as well. Charlotte said, of course. You've all been so eager to meet her. Meanwhile Lilith thinks, get it together, Charlotte. Don't forget, your mission today is to interrogate the princess about her intentions. Charlotte thinks, I must succeed at all costs and win Mordred's heart. A lady asked Lilith, was it not terrifying when the Demon King carried you off? What was the demon realm like? It must have been an utterly horrendous place. It is too awful to even imagine. Lilith said, I was incredibly scared, but with the warrior coming to my rescue, I had nothing to worry about. Meanwhile she thinks, forgive me, my demons. Nothing beats the demon realm. A lady in pink dress said, I hope I do not offend you when I say I envy you greatly, Your Highness. A lady in green dress said, in all the kingdom, there is no one more dashing than Sir Mordred. Hearing the clip-clopping of his horse's hooves is enough to set any woman's heart aflutter. What do you think, Your Highness? You have seen the knight up close. What is he like? The lady in blue dress glanced at Charlotte. She thinks seeing Charlotte, she put off their marriage. Surely she's not going to say she loves him. Lilith said, he is exactly as you've described. He is dashing, noble-minded. And full of vigor. Full of vigor? Hearing this Charlotte and Isla gets shocked and Charlotte thinks, full of vigor? Lilith thinks, the journey to the demon castle must have exhausted him, yet he whisked me to the human realm as soon as he found me. Charlotte shouts hearing this, what on earth transpired between you and the knight? Could it be that you and Sir Mordred? Meanwhile she suddenly stops and thinks, I should hold off on asking this until she's had some of that tea. She said, oh dear, your tea is getting cold. Hearing this Lilith thinks, tea? Charlotte said, it was brewed using tea leaves specially cultivated by House Magnus. It has a calming effect on the mind, as well as a most exquisite scent. Picking the cup Lilith said, I shall try it then. She drinks the tea and Charlotte gets happy seeing this and thinks, there we go. Meanwhile Lilith thinks, looks like she spiked it with something. This is all unfolding exactly like in the novels. She thinks, but what could it be? Poison? Poison doesn't have any effect on me, though. Should I pretend to faint? The lady in green dress said, Your Highness, please continue telling us about Sir Mordred. She asked, how did he slay the demon lord? Was it with a single stroke of his sword? The lady in blue said, Your Highness must be accustomed to living in pristine luxury. However, did you ever manage to survive in that filthy, barren land? Hearing this Lilith thinks, I feel something bubbling inside me. My lips are tingling. On the other hand, Mordred went to Lilith's room. While standing beside the door he thinks, I came all the way here. But wouldn't it be rude to interrupt their tea party? Instead of knocking he opened the door a little to peek inside thinking, I'll just pop in for a moment. Lilith said, You want to know how I survived in the filthy, barren wasteland that is the demon realm? She said I didn't need to. Because she raised her hand, saying, "My homeland has the most beautiful mountains, freshest water, and clearest skies in the world. I am the Demon Queen." Mordred gets shocked hearing this. Lilith gets confused and thinks, damn it. She thinks, that wasn't poison. It was some sort of potion, one that forces you to reveal all your secrets. Mordred asked, "Your Highness, what could you possibly mean by that?" Seeing him, she gets shocked and asked, "Mordred?" He said, "Please explain what's going on." Charlotte said, "What are you doing here?" Lilith thinks, "I can't trip up." She thinks she'll have to do better than this to take down the Demon Queen. She thinks, "I'll turn this situation around to my advantage." Suddenly she starts swaying and said, "Oh, I feel faint." She fell down and the lady shouts, "Eek!" Mordred gets shocked and shouts, "Your Highness!" He picks her, saying, "Your Highness! Your Highness! Can you hear me?" Meanwhile, seeing her, Charlotte thinks, what is happening? That concoction was only supposed to make her reveal her true thoughts. It shouldn't have had any side effects. Meanwhile, Isla said, "Excuse me, you there?" She comes closer to Charlotte, asking, "What exactly did you put in the princess's tea?" Isla said, "Do you see that spilled liquid over there? The princess's behavior became erratic after drinking that." Charlotte started sweating after hearing this and said, "Well." Mordred in serious tone asked, "Lady Charlotte, is what the servant said true?" Meanwhile she thinks, "I cannot believe Mordred would doubt me." The lady starts whispering, "Come to think of it, Her Highness did start acting strange right after taking a sip of her tea. But we were fine after drinking ours, were we not? Does that mean she only tampered with the princess's drink?" Isla comes close to Charlotte, shouting, "You kept urging her to drink her tea. You clearly meant her harm." Charlotte clenched her hand, saying, "That is not true. I merely—" Mordred stops them, saying, "Enough." He said, "We must not make accusations without proof." Furious Isla shouts, "But—" Charlotte said, "I knew you would understand, Sir Mordred." He said, "Do not misconstrue my intentions." He picks Lilith in his arms, saying, "Our priority is to make sure Her Highness is unharmed." He turns his face towards her, saying, "I shall see what you have to say for yourself afterwards." He lay her down the bed, saying, "Please hold on just a little longer, Your Highness." He said, "I shall call for the physician." Meanwhile she thinks, "Holy crap, this is everything I've ever wanted. I should be able to cross off a third of the items on my bucket list by the end of the day. But how long do I need to lie here for? The effects of that potion seem to have worn, huh?" Charlotte starts crying and thinks, "It is true that I spiked her tea, but—" Lilith pretends as she was in sleep and she wakes up, saying, "Yawn. Did I fall into a deep sleep?" Seeing her awake, they shouts, "Your Highness?" Lilith said to Charlotte, "You were right about the soothing effects of that brew. My fatigue has disappeared completely." The ladies and Mordred comes to her, asking, "Are you okay?" She thinks, it was incredibly disrespectful of her to mess with the Demon Queen. "But I suppose I'll let it slide since it got the knight to hold me in his arms." She said, "I have had such trouble sleeping lately. Thanks to Lady Charlotte, I've finally gotten some much-needed rest." Charlotte said, "That is because I served you the best leaves among the herbs grown by my family." Hearing this, Mordred said to Charlotte, "Lady Charlotte." He bowed and said, "It was wrong of me to make assumptions. My apologies." He said, "I know these words are not enough to make amends. If you can think of a more fitting punishment, please let me know." She thinks, "Mordred apologized to me." She said, "I will forgive you just this once." Mordred said, "Thank you for being so generous." Isla said, "I apologize for doubting you as well." Seeing them, Lilith thinks, how heartwarming. A demon queen cannot allow herself to live in debt to humans, after all. Isla comes to Lilith and asked her, "Why haven't you been able to sleep?" Lilith said, "Oh, about that." Showing the letter Mordred writes to her, she said, "It's because I received this passionate love letter from Sir Mordred. Hearing this, he gets shocked and thinks, a love letter, from me? Lilith said, I've read it so many times that I can practically recite it off the top of my head. She kissed the letter, saying, if all of you really, really want, I can give you a small teaser. The ladies said, eek. A love letter? How romantic. Please read it to us. Lilith said, all right, but just the beginning. Oh, fairest princess. Mordred was about to lose his sense while thinking, no. While trying to take the letter from her, he thinks, I have to get that out of her hands. He shouts, why, your highness. As he tries to get the letter, he slipped from the tea on the ground and felt on Lilith. Lilith gets happy and gives a smile, while Mordred gets nervous and starts blushing.